The hospital is within walking distance. Haha.
John said so as he got Olivia out of the car. Isabella sat in the passenger seat and John in the driver's seat as I was startled by the suddenness.
Then, off we go.
Since I've made up with Tim, we're going to enjoy a family trip to Spain. Just the three of us.
She said so and they drove away. What a situation! I was so taken aback by what had just happened in front of me that I was lost for words.
I'm sorry.
I came back to myself with Olivia's scratchy voice. At that point, nothing else mattered, and I immediately called a cab to take Olivia to the hospital. That was all I could focus on. And it was anger that I would never forgive. At that moment, John and his parents surely never imagined I would take such bold action. I vowed revenge in my heart against John and Isabella for neglecting me and Olivia. My name is Emma. I am 42 years old and work as a nurse. My husband, John, is 45, just a regular office worker. Our daughter, Olivia, is a quiet child who just turned 10 and loves reading by herself at home or during school breaks. Due to my job, I hardly had male friends, and I never even went to mixers because I was focused on my career. Then, just after I turned 30, my friend insisted on going to a singles party because she was nervous about attending alone, and although I wasn't interested, I agreed to accompany her. That's where I met John. He joked about how he had lived for his work and had missed the chance to marry. I felt a strange connection to him, seeing my own situation reflected in his, and we ended up exchanging contact information. Talking to him, I found John to be a kind man, with a stable job and income. He understood my irregular nursing schedule, which undoubtedly drew me to him. John felt the same way.
I want to know more about you, Emma.
I was genuinely pleased, he said. Thus, we began to draw closer to each other, starting a relationship with marriage in mind, and I got married at the age of 31. I got pregnant with Olivia almost immediately after our wedding, and gave birth the next year at 32. We both agreed that one child was enough, so we didn't try for more. Now, 10 years have passed. A sinister shadow was looming over me. One day, John blurted out,
My mom is coming to stay with us from tomorrow. Please take care of her.
His sudden declaration of cohabitation took me by surprise. What do you mean? All of a sudden, I'm not ready for her. I asked him the reason with a surprised voice. According to John, it seemed that Tim and Isabella had a fierce argument, and in the heat of the moment, Isabella had declared, I'm leaving, and started packing. Naturally, the only place for Isabella, a woman in her 60s, to go was to her only son, John. That's why he suddenly announced that she would be coming to our house the next day. Honestly, I was opposed to living with even my own parents, let alone my mill. Do we have to take her in just because she had a fight with her husband and decided to leave home? Is she ignoring our situation? Please, think it over. However, John seemed to dislike my protest, responding with annoyance.
You hate living with my mom that much? I never thought you were so cold.
I couldn't say how much I disliked the idea. John's face was too intimidating, and I felt overwhelmed. I swallowed the words I wanted to say, and instead glared at him. Seeing that I couldn't talk back, John looked smug and continued.
Don't bother resisting from the start. Just get the room ready for Mom, will you?
First off, since this place is rented, we need permission from the landlord or property management if someone else is moving in. The lease is in my name since I get a housing allowance, so naturally, I'm the one who has to handle it. Plus, we live in a 2-bedrooms apartment. One room is used by Olivia, and the other is our bedroom. Sorry, but we don't have a spare room available right now, do we? John casually dropped this bombshell.
Why not just move Olivia and have her study in the living room? That way, you can keep an eye on her doing her homework. I think it's a good idea. She's still in elementary school. She doesn't need a room of her own. Well, that's the plan. Olivia will stay in the living room for a while.
I felt dizzy hearing such an outrageous argument. How can you say something like that? Are you prioritizing your mom over your own daughter?
I didn't exactly say that, but I do owe my mom for raising me. So, yeah, that's it.
Despite my repeated objections, it didn't get through to John, and as soon as Olivia returned, he was told,
Your room will be used by Grandma from now on, so clean it out right now.
I rushed to stop it, but she, saying it was okay, started moving her things to the living room. Watching her from behind, my heart ached, and I felt my hatred for him swelling. Lately, John hasn't been contributing to household chores or finances, and he's been coming home late. I had been putting up with it because Olivia is still only 10, but today's behavior seemed to be the last straw. The next day, as expected, in the late afternoon, Isabel arrived and immediately screamed,
What is this stump? You expect us to live here, John? Are you out of your mind? This is insane.
Isabella's arrival coincided with our neighbor's return home, who looked at us curiously, prompting me to hurriedly greet them. When I contacted the property management, they said no special procedures were needed for a short-term stay, just a report was enough. So, honestly, I hoped Isabella would return home within 2 weeks, if possible. However, my hopes were dashed. First, when I saw the large suitcase Isabella brought, I was depressed, indicating she planned to stay for at least a month, which was disheartening. Isabella entered our apartment without any regard for me, looking around as if inspecting everything. Then she went straight to the fridge and started criticizing.
What's this? The fridge is almost empty. Do you think John and Olivia can get proper nutrition from this? Really, Emma, you're hopeless.
I was supposed to go grocery shopping today, but Isabella's sudden arrival meant I had to tidy up immediately after work and couldn't find the time. This is when takeout should be considered. Lately, John has been preferring takeout over my cooking, constantly making sarcastic remarks, and I was defiant at his words. Isabella, should we order some takeout today? I asked her with a forced smile, but she snapped at me again.
What? No, I don't allow takeout food. A mother and wife who doesn't cook is worthless. Go shopping right now. And make sure you can prepare a main dish, 5 side dishes, soup, and dessert.
She threw a shopping basket and bag at me and slammed the door shut. Immediately, I could hear the TV blasting and she laughing loudly from inside, and I sighed deeply, not knowing how many times I had done so. 1 hour later, after shopping, I returned and was shocked to see that Olivia had been doing her homework in the living room, with Isabella looming over her like a demon while I was away. Whenever she made a mistake, Isabella would shout, "That's wrong," or "Why don't you get it? Such a bad child. I wonder who she takes after." I quickly intervened. She's just started learning this recently. Even elementary students have foreign language and programming classes now. You know, you can't judge by old standards. I defended Olivia and admonished Isabella, but my words fell on deaf ears.
Well, I wish she had taken over this smart John Jean.
She implied disdain for both me and Olivia. Seeing Olivia's downtrodden face, I immediately comforted her. It's okay, Olivia. You just work at your own pace. I glared fiercely at Isabella, but it didn't seem to affect her. She just got angry at my response and started to greedily eat snacks. And a week has passed since Isabella and we lived together. I was so fed up that I confronted John. Look, I can't ignore this any longer. Do something about your mom. I can handle the snide remarks, but this is just too much for Olivia. John retorted with a look of displeasure and a sharp tone.
Why, you should be grateful she's helping around the house. Besides, it's Olivia's fault for not being able to study, right? She's the real victim here, taking after her not-so-smart mother.
That really ticked me off, and I couldn't hold back any longer. Usually, I would end a conversation and walk away, but as a mother, my heart ached hearing my daughter being spoken of like that. And Isabella, she only acted sweet for John. When I was busy, she would come over with a big smile, saying,
Don't worry, Emma, just sit down and have some tea. I'll take care of everything.
She pretended to be helpful, but in reality, she did nothing, leaving me to do all the work later. Is John blind to this reality? John, who believed that Isabella was helping me, I took my old haunting complaints out on him. So it's clear, your top priority isn't Olivia, it's Isabella. Are you okay with your daughter being criticized harshly by Isabella? I couldn't stand it even if my own mother did that. John provocatively laughed.
Yeah, my mom is always right. Well, you're just a nursing school grad unlike me, a college grad. So, no wonder Olivia can't excel in studies or sports. Poor thing.
At that moment, I felt something snap inside me. But thinking it childish to lash out impulsively, I replied with a laugh. All right, I get it. A month later, Olivia, who usually wakes up early even on weekends, stayed curled up in bed, so when I asked her, she complained of feeling unwell. Remembering the recent epidemic at school, I measured her temperature. It was 102 degrees Fahrenheit. I rushed to tell John, only to find him inexplicably getting ready to leave. I was puzzled, and John said as a matter of course,
Oh, I forgot to tell you, but I'm off to Spain with my dad and mom.
I hadn't heard anything about this trip, but at that moment, I didn't care. We only have one car, which is mine, since John commutes by train. Ignoring John, I tried to take Olivia to the hospital, which is open even on weekends, but then John and Isabella showed up with their suitcases and dropped the bombshell.
The hospital is within walking distance.
John said so as he got Olivia out of the car. Isabella sat in the passenger seat and John in the driver's seat as I was startled by the suddenness.
Then, off we go.
We've made up with Tim, so we're going to enjoy a family trip to Spain, just the three of us.
She said so, and they drove away. Stunned by the sudden events, I was brought back to reality when Olivia, with a raspy voice, said, "I'm sorry." Suddenly, nothing else mattered, and all I could think about was calling a cab immediately to take her to the hospital. And it was anger that I would never forgive. At that moment, John and his parents surely never imagined I would take such bold action. I vowed revenge in my heart against John and Isabella for neglecting me and Olivia. 2.5 hours later, my phone vibrated relentlessly with calls from John. I didn't want to answer, but ignoring it wouldn't change anything. Reluctantly, I answered the phone with a heavy sigh. Then, before I could speak, John screamed in a voice like a shriek.
Please, help me.
I wondered what had happened, and it turned out he had a car accident on the way to the airport. Actually, my car is a manual transmission. John has a license for manual vehicles, but I guess he forgot how to drive one since he commutes by train. But in front of Isabella, he couldn't admit he wasn't confident driving a manual anymore. Of course, I have proper car insurance, and I made sure it covered John as a potential driver. So, there's nothing illegal about John driving. But it's his own fault he crashed since he took the car without my consent. While I was thinking this, John blurted out,
If I deal with the accident, I'll miss the flight. It's your car, so you handle it. It's all because this car is so hard to drive. It guzzles gas. What an old beat-up car.
He started to complain, but it just sounded like the whining of a loser. I finally reached a point of not caring, and said with a smirk, So what? You knew my car was manual, right? You took it forcefully. The accident responsibility lies with the driver, not the owner. Hit a guardrail, didn't you? Then, you'll be paying for the car repairs and the guardrail damage out of your pocket. I told him that and hung up. The phone kept ringing persistently, but I was in the hospital. Olivia had something different from the epidemic she needed further tests, and we were waiting for those results. I didn't have the luxury to deal with such selfish people. Ignoring the calls, I then heard the notification sound of an email. Checking my phone, expecting it to be another message from John, my eyebrows furrowed at the sender's name. I thought even had Isabella and Tim sided with John, but while Isabella was just sending desperate pleas for help, Tim asked, "What happened?" Finding it odd, I replied only to Tim, and discovered a surprising fact. Tim had no idea about the Spain trip and was enjoying his day with his lawn bowling friends. Then Isabella called him about the accident, asking to be picked up. She just kept saying, "Just come," without giving details, thinking it was a prank until John also reached out for help. And Tim thought me and Olivia were with them, so he was worried about me and sent me an email. "Why didn't you reply to them and only message me?" I immediately called Tim and asked, and he gave an unexpected response.
Just a hunch. Besides, we are currently separated, so the thought of dealing with her made me not want to. Did my wife cause any trouble?
Tim wasn't even aware that Isabella was staying with us, thinking she had just gotten herself into trouble due to her selfishness. I held my breath and slowly told him what had happened. "She is currently staying with us," she said, "including you. We're going to Spain for a family trip today." After I mentioned what they did to Olivia and me right before leaving, Tim fell silent. After a while, he finally spoke in a voice lower than I'd ever heard.
That's unforgivable.
His voice was so low and gravelly, unlike anything I'd ever heard. It sent shivers down my spine. 30 minutes after finishing the call with him, I was finally summoned by the doctor to discuss her condition. It seems she has acute gastroenteritis. We were told she would need to stay in the hospital for a bit. Relief washed over me, but at the same time, I was consumed with guilt for the stress I had caused her. We were fortunate to get a private room. "Olivia, how are you feeling? We got a private room, so rest easy, okay?" I tried to sound cheerful when talking to her, but she looked guilty and apologized.
I'm sorry. It's my fault you had a bad time. And now my studies will be delayed. I'm so sorry. So sorry.
I rushed to her side and hugged her gently. I'm not raising you because you're good at studies, but because you're my precious child. Live your life as you are. Later, Tim, who had arrived at the hospital, contacted us, and Olivia, always a grandpa's girl, was delighted. Tim seemed happy to see Olivia after a long time, and they starting a pleasant conversation. He mentioned seeing in the newspaper that she had won a prize in an art contest and boasted about it to his lawn bowling friends, which led to a pleasant time. Then, an unwelcome call came through. It was John and Isabella.
We missed the flight because you didn't help us. We can cancel, so it's like we've lost the full amount of the trip. You owe us for all 3 tickets.
Isabella chimed in.
We had the chance to make up with Tim.
I was outside the hospital talking to them, but their voices were so loud it was as if they were on speaker. Then Tim, who had followed me, casually remarked,
Wait, I wasn't invited to any trip to Spain. It seems there's a third person involved, but it's neither Olivia or Emma, and certainly not me. So, who could it be?
John and Isabella probably never imagined Tim would be there. They started to get nervous.
Hey, why is Dad at Emma's place?
I could imagine his voice weakening over the phone. I pointed out that the two were lying and that Tim had seen through them, which is why he contacted me instead. Then Isabella began to make excuses.
Well, it was a lie that we invited Tim. So it's just the 2 of us going on this trip. Don't pry any further.
It was as if she was asking to be doubted. Trying to contain my laughter, I counted. Oh, really? Because I just checked, and the reservation site clearly says 3 people. At that, the 2 of them lost their words. They suddenly fell silent. Recently, Olivia told me that Isabella had been using my computer while I was away. She didn't know the details, but mentioned something about searching for Spain. So, I logged into my travel booking site out of curiosity and found it a reservation for 3 people made by Isabella under my name. I had already confirmed the charges on my credit card. So, the financial damage was mine. Thinking John absurd for complaining about cancellation fees. The evidence of a third person in the reservation was clear, so I pressed on who that might be. Still, John continued to deny.
Well, it seems like Mom got the number of people wrong. It was supposed to be just the 2 of us.
Is that so? John sighed, relieved. Anyway, the trip is off, right? So, come to the location I'm about to tell you. We'll discuss what to do next there. I said that and hung up. I left Olivia in her hospital room and waited with Tim for their arrival at a nearby chain restaurant. When they showed up, John inexplicably got angry.
The guardrail damages aren't covered by insurance, so you deal with it.
I was appalled at his audacity. What? You hit it, it's your fault for being careless. You pay for it, as I said before. What nonsense are you spouting? After glaring fiercely, John's face contorted as he stepped back slightly. Then Isabella spoke up.
Never mind that. So, Emma, what's this talk about?
Eager to get to the point, I thanked Isabella in a way for steering us there, and said, upon checking, the dash cam showed Isabella in the passenger seat and John driving, along with an unknown young woman in the back seat. The moment I spoke, their faces contorted. In fact, the dash cam in my car is quite high-tech. It allows me to check the footage in real time through an app on my smartphone. I could access past footage immediately from my phone. My car is a pretty good model, so I had taken strong security measures in case of theft. I never imagined that these precautions would end up revealing John's infidelity as well. So, you lied about going with your parents, planning to take your mistress instead. Thanks for leaving such clear evidence. Contrary to my smile, I could see their faces turning pale. They probably thought they could destroy the evidence by removing the SD card. I revealed that I had been suspicious of his behavior and quietly investigating any evidence of his affairs since the day I started to doubt him. I was planning to confront him with divorce once I had solid evidence, but then Isabella moved in. They were going to Spain, and Olivia got seriously ill. I was busy, but I had been considering divorcing John from the start. Tim, who had been silent for a long time, said to them who had nothing to say,
Like mother, like son, huh? Isabella, you can't say much because you're cheating with a younger man yourself.
John, unaware of this, looked at her in shock. Isabella blushed in front of the eyes of people around her at a chain restaurant.
At your age, you got seduced by a much younger man and lavished him with gifts, and fell in love. Save your daydreams for bedtime.
Tim, usually quiet and not prone to shouting, was visibly angry. This is the reason why Isabella left home. After all, she deserved it. Yet, she made excuses, trying to shift the blame to Tim, showing no shame for intruding into our home. Disgusted, I looked at Isabella with scorn. I don't intend to meddle in your affairs, but John, you're obviously getting divorced from me, and I'll take custody. Child support and alimony are a given, along with compensation for the accident damages and the Spain trip costs. Be prepared for all. Of course, I will make a claim to your cheating partner. Immediately, John, without regard for the public eye, started apologizing.
Okay, I'll pay everything. I'll cover the compensation to the other party too. Just don't contact her, please.
The reason he gave was astonishing. Apparently, John's affair partner was the daughter of an important client at his company, and she was completely unaware of his marital status. Isabella liked his affair partner because she was wealthy, and without any shame, Isabella invited her, saying, "Since we have the chance, let's go on a trip together." The naive young woman took it seriously and even praised John for his driving of the manual car. This was confirmed by the dashcam footage. Evidently, John, flattered by the praise, crashed into the guardrail due to his negligence. Tim and I exchanged looks and laughed bitterly at the ridiculous cause of the accident. They said they would handle the affair partner themselves and just asked to go back home. That led to them calling me.
Being exposed for deceiving the president's daughter and dating her would definitely get me fired. Please, I'll do as you say. Just don't tell her. Come on, we're married, right? Can't you show some consideration for me at the end? I've been a good husband supporting you. I deserve that much.
I smirked at his attitude and responded, "All right, I'll listen to everything you have to say, but I won't entertain any pathetic pleas for help, got it?"
Ha, as if I'd make such a pitiful, uncool plea. Okay, that's settled then.
Thus, I divorced John, claimed a fixed amount including child support, and our marriage ended. But the real drama unfolded later.
What do you mean? She found out about the affair.
After some time post-divorce, John called me in distress. I realized I'd forgotten to block his number. As I pondered this, he continued to rant.
It's the worst. The president insists on apologizing to you and is furious with me. You broke the promise not to tell her, so give back the money now.
While listening to John, I wondered why I ever married him. Then, I decided to reveal a truth he hadn't anticipated. You know I'm a car enthusiast, right? And the president you mentioned. He runs an auto parts manufacturing company. Actually, I've been a client there. I requested them to fix my car you wrecked. Then, by chance, his daughter was there, your mistress. Seeing the car, she screamed, and everything came to light. See, I didn't break any promise. Realizing this, John groaned. His mistress was working diligently as an apprentice mechanic at her father's company. It was natural for her to be shocked when a woman she didn't know brought in the car her boyfriend had damaged for repairs. When asked what happened, I simply stated the truth. My ex-husband crashed into a guardrail causing a solo accident, and since the car is under my name, I brought it in for repairs. The mistress pieced everything together, explained the situation to her father, and it probably reached his company. Her father was furious, questioning the upbringing that led to his daughter being involved with a married man.
Now I lose everything. Kicked out of my home, broke, estranged by my dad, and left with my burdensome mom. And now I'm losing my job too.
His complaints were his own doing. If you had lived decently, none of this would have happened. It's all due to your actions. Take care, and don't contact me ever again. I firmly stated my farts and hung up. This time, I definitively blocked John's number, cutting off our relationship for good. Later, I received a call that my car was repaired, inadvertently learning about John's fate. Indeed, it seems he was fired from the company. The reason was that he embezzled the company's money. There was a suggestion that returning the money could have led to a demotion instead of dismissal, but with a substantial debt incurred to pay me, John didn't have that luxury. Thus, he left the company unceremoniously. Isabella has continued to be dependent on John. At their age, it's not feasible to force her to work, and without any money, she has no choice but to care for him at home. They are now living in a cramped studio apartment, costing around $200 a month. Of course, after the in-laws divorced, Tim proposed not dividing the assets and hence not demanding alimony, which Isabella agreed to. However, this led to a life of extreme poverty. John saved money by eating simple foods like baked potatoes, but unable to resist, Isabella ordered expensive steak for delivery, leading to a dispute that required police intervention. Eventually, Isabella had to find work and is now doing part-time jobs at a convenience store several times a week. Despite her age, it's sad she has to work, but for Isabella, it's a case of reaping what she sowed, and no one sympathizes with her. On my end, I've continued with life as usual after divorcing John. I was already covering most of the living expenses, so Olivia and I have stayed in our home, with no major changes to our lifestyle. Ironically, Olivia's grades improved, possibly because she was free from John's constant nagging about her studies. Especially her art grades have been excellent, and she's even expressed a desire to pursue a career in the arts. As a parent, my role is to respect her choices. Even if it's a thorny path, as long as it's not leading her astray, I'm intent on letting her pursue her interests to her heart's content.
Look, I won first place in the contest again.
That's my girl. You've got real talent in art.
Olivia visited Tim in his facility, maintaining their relationship through her updates. I divorced John, so he is no longer my Phil, but this is how I continue to connect with Tim through Olivia. I am deeply grateful to Tim, who believed in me over John and Isabella. I hope he lives a long and healthy life.